Welcome to Beyond Names. I'm Dr. Habīb. This is a space for spiritual seekers and soulful misfits, for the curious and the committed, for those grounded in a tradition and those who are not sure what they believe. Whether you call the divine Allah, Yahweh, Elohim, Brahman, higher power, source, great mystery, spirit, or you're still searching for language that fits, you are welcome here. Together, we'll explore the intersection of spirituality and daily life, the wisdom of many traditions, and the ways we return to our true selves, to our source, to the light we carry within. I'm so glad you're here. Let's begin I'll introduce our speakers and dialogue partners, conversation partners for this episode. Reverend Julie Davis is a spiritual counselor, a community pastor, and interfaith chaplain. She is currently pastoring at Central Avenue Church in Glendale, California. Reverend Julie is founder and facilitator of Queer Space, which is a safe space and discussion group for those who identify as queer and also religious or spiritual. To learn more about Julie you may learn more about Julie through the church's podcast, which is called the Central Cast, and that's at centralavenuechurch.org, or by contacting her directly at juliadavisla@gmail.com. And Reverend Madison Jones McAleese, did I say that
Oh,
properly?
perfectly.
Okay, great. Reverend Madison runs a nonprofit consulting firm, Access Impact, which is a nonprofit organization that I forgot I forgot what Access Impact does.
It's actually a for-profit, but that consults nonprofits.
A
So I
for-profit that
do
consult.
consulting for nonprofit organizations.
Okay, there you go. Thank you. Sorry for messing up your bio. Reverend Madison is also currently the executive director of FCM, an organization committed to empowering and nurturing those who are inspired for expansive ministries around the world. Reverend Madison is also a host of a small interfaith dialogue group through FCM. She is also a deacon with the Catholic Apostolic Church in North America and frequently presides at her home church, Dignity San Fernando Valley. So to learn more about Reverend Madison and her work, you can visit madisonjonesmacaleese.com, or you can visit her YouTube channel, which is called Translating Faith. So Reverend Julie, Reverend Madison, thank you both for being here. So as you both know, I'm a student and teacher of Islamic mysticism, and you've probably gathered from our conversations that I'm a fan of mysticism across traditions, primarily because what I have found in my study of the mysticism, whether it's Christian mysticism or Jewish mysticism or Islamic mysticism, is that in the mystical paths of the various traditions, there becomes a greater emphasis on embodying a union with the sacred in our relationship to others, in how we relate to each other. So there's this emphasis on seeking to manifest the reality of a loving relationship with the divine by becoming love in how we interact and relate to the rest of creation. Because you are both Christians, and Reverend Madison, I know you're Catholic, I wanted to set the tone for our conversation with one of my favorite quotes, which you know is my quote from Sister Thelma Hall's book, Too Deep for Words, Rediscovering Lectio Divina. And that quote is, "To see every woman and every man as sister and brother is to participate in the faith vision of the mystic, whose central intuition is the unity and oneness of all in God. It is a graced effect of contemplation which gradually transforms our way of seeing reality. This mystical vision is far from an esoteric or misty dream, for surely the survival of our planet depends on a universal realization of this unity and interconnectedness of all peoples and of all the cosmos in the one love, which is God. So, to move us toward this realization of unity and interconnectedness of all people in the one love, you who are my holy, beloved sisters, I invite you to share a little bit about your spiritual stories to let us get to know who you are and what your journeys have been like. So, who would like to start?
You want to go, Julie?
Youth before beauty, Madison.
Incredible.
Oh, beauty before age is what I meant to say.
I am happy to share. Um, and it's a long story, so I'll make it short, but or as short as I can, because I'm a bit of a talker. I was born and raised Roman Catholic. Was perfectly happy being Roman Catholic as a child, and ended up being the only really practicing Christian still in my family in my early 20s. But then just out of happenstance found a non-denominational church by me that I started going to. So I left the Catholic Church really for no specific reason. I just found a different church, and it was down the street from me, and it was very rock church, very sort of quasi evangelical without being openly evangelical. A lot of these non-denominational churches are sort of secretly evangelical in their belief systems. And I was very active there for many, many years, but left when after 2020, and we all sort of had a collective reckoning about what justice meant to us as people of faith, especially after George Floyd's murder. And that's when I actually found Julie. I found Julie at her church at the time. And it was a big wake up moment for me that I saw that a woman could be a pastor. Um, and that, she was speaking directly to me. There was this embodiment of what it meant to be a strong woman of faith that was sharing their experience with me. Um, so after we both left that church, there was a lot of questioning on my end and figuring out what was important to me, because at the time my spirituality was really showing up in community. Julie and I would gather with our community at the time, and it was really based in friendship and dialogue. And it was so important to me, and it still is, that type of community, as you were really talking about in the beginning, sort of seeing another, seeing the divine in another, is a key part of my faith. But what I discovered was missing was the faith of my childhood and the faith of my cultural tradition, my Sicilian roots, which is the ritual. And I didn't know I was missing it until I had this craving for sort of meditative ritual. And so I went back to Catholicism, except I found, and a lot of people didn't know this and they still don't, that there is a whole sort of sect of Catholics out there that are non-Roman Catholics. They consider themselves inclusive Catholics. Some use the term independent Catholics. It's not my preferred term, but we're inclusive Catholics. So I'm a member of the Catholic Apostolic Church in North America. We share the sacraments, we share the history, the traditions, we share apostolic succession, which means we can technically trace our bishop's lineage back to the apostles, just like the Roman Catholic Church. But we're open and affirming, and we believe in sacramental justice, which means everyone can come to the table and take part in communion no matter who you are. They ordain women, men, married people, gender nonconforming people, queer people, whoever you are. If you have a faith and a desire for the Catholic faith, you have a place there. And so that's where I found myself. And I was ordained as a deacon, and I have been deaconing in my local Dignity chapter. Dignity is a group of queer Catholics, and they're all around the country. And my local chapter is in the San Fernando Valley, and that's been a really lovely, beautiful place to witness the expression of queer spirituality and queer love and all of its embodiment. And then through all that, as you mentioned in the bio, I'm also the executive director of FCM, which is an organization that really ordains ministers, endorses chaplains, and supports faith leaders who don't feel included or welcome in traditional denominations, traditional faith spaces, maybe because they don't align with them sort of politically or ideologically, or because they're queer or women or can't be ordained for some reason, and want a place where they can express their spirituality in a safe space. So we have Christian roots, but we are really much more ecumenical and growing interfaith by the day. And so I've really found a lot of beauty in sort of meshing the traditional ritualistic side of faith and also this sort of expansive, inclusive definition of what faith can also be.
Wonderful. Thank
Oh,
you.
I was really vibing with a bunch of the themes of what you said, Madison. I was raised evangelical by people who still don't call themselves evangelical. That's pretty common. It was the 90s, and even in churches that had been more centrist, evangelicals were kind of infiltrating, and my parents were part of that, like Reagan Republicans, who didn't really make a distinction between um, religion and politics, in the sense that if you were a Christian, you were a Republican. And so I grew up not feeling like that from a very early age, and feeling like there was some tension with the culture in which I was being raised, but really didn't have the language for it at all. I just knew that the ways that these Christians around me were talking didn't feel like my ways. And I didn't really realize the germ or the seed of that until I came out when I was about, well, when I was 19. I came out to one person, aka my girlfriend, the person I fell in love with, and that was it for a very long time. That was the extent of my coming out. Um, and I stepped away from the church because I felt like I had to. I didn't have any idea that there was a place in church or religion or Christianity for someone who was queer. Long story short, I came back to church through through an Episcopalian church in Pasadena, and sat with Quakers for a little while. Went to seminary, and found the Disciples of Christ, which was an open and affirming. Disciples of Christ are congregational, but many of them are open and affirming, and joined that church, and then later pastored that church, and that's where Madison found me. And the end of this very abbreviated spiritual narrative actually is that I'm back in a non-denominational church, which I just realized connects to this quote that I have. I'm not going to be able to quote it directly, but Thich Nhat Hanh said something about how if you want to be a person of peace, you have to first go back to the church or the tradition that you were born in and make peace there. Because if you can't make peace there, you can't make peace anywhere. And so it's interesting, Madison, that both you and I have kind of ended up where we began in a lot of ways. The church that I'm with is non-denominational because it wants to be free to deconstruct. So it's a like non-denominational ex-evangelical as opposed to evangelical church, and but it's been a good fit. And I just realized that I've gone back in a way to the faith of my childhood, like you said, Madison, going back to Catholicism, but finding it on different terms.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And sort of
So
creating those terms for ourselves too.
yeah, I mean, it's I think a lot of people leave church, leave religion, leave spirituality because they don't feel like they fit. And I think there's a little bit of a PR problem out there for mystics and open and affirming churches and these places that really do exist without the strict boundaries that I think all three of us grew up with in church,
Yeah.
right? Where
Yeah.
my boundaries were you have to be Republican and straight. And I was like, oh, I'm not either of those things. So therefore, I'll just leave. And I just showed
Mm.
myself the door because I knew I knew it wasn't worth it to even have a conversation. And it
Yeah.
took a long time in the wilderness for me to figure out that there's a bigger tent and that there is a way to find a place that you fit in. And that's like I so want that message to get out there for anyone who feels like they have to like give up on God because they've been given terms that are unacceptable to them.
Mhm.
Um, those terms are man-made. So make new terms.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I so appreciate your sharing your story, both of you. So thank you. And thank you for the honesty around your journeys. And I can so strongly relate to that experience of growing up in what I call an exclusivist church. And the Christian church that I grew up in was like, it was so exclusivist. It was not only did you have to be Protestant versus Catholic, not only did you have to like, I mean, it was so like if you didn't follow this one individual seminary,
Mm.
Mhm.
I mean, it was down to the teachings of one seminary. And if it wasn't,
Wow.
then you were out.
Wow.
I've shared this in conversation, I think, with both of them. We were talking the other day that when I first was exposed to Muslims who had a similar experience of feeling excluded in their own culture or in their own mosque or whatever, I was so astounded by that because that had not
Mm.
been my experience, because I came to Islam through mysticism. And I felt like the teacher was like, here, would you like a taste of love? You know, a love that's expansive and unifying and goes beyond all traditions and beyond all ways that we make separation. You know, would you like that kind of love? And
Mm.
here, let's have some
Mm.
more. Like that had been my experience. And then I was so shocked to find, oh my goodness, people in all traditions
Mm.
are feeling excluded, are feeling like I don't fit in,
Mm.
whether it's I don't fit in my family or I don't fit in my synagogue or I don't fit in my temple or my church or my mosque. Like the people everywhere are feeling like I don't fit in.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so I so appreciate your being willing to talk about how you have journeyed with that experience of feeling
Yeah.
like that there was a place that you didn't fit in. And so how have you traveled and how have you searched in order to find that place of fitting in? So, to,
Habib, can I say something, or were you leading up to something?
I was leading, but please go ahead.
No. Lead.
No, no, no.
It'll keep. Well,
What?
okay. Maybe this dives us in the deep end, but you used a metaphor of like, do you want a taste of love? You know, it's like, well, here's a buffet of love, right? And then the exclusive church is like, here's half of a cracker. Um, and I was thinking about how um that sense of uh, that in the exclusivist church, when I was existing in the exclusivist church, I didn't have language for the way that I didn't fit in. But I think my body had an experience of being starved in a way.
Mm.
And the question I wanted to ask both of you is on the other on the freedom end of our narratives, how did it feel in your body, or how does it feel in your body to have that expansion? Like I can remember a moment where I I was driving, and like I'm not going to get into the details, but there was a longing that I was having, and it felt like in the exclusivist version of reality, that longing was unacceptable. And
Mm.
then when I just sort of was able to accept myself and accept that longing, I I just instinctively just wept, just like as a release. And I find that that happens to me a lot when I feel that the expansiveness of love. My
Mm.
body responds. It's almost like a um it's like my body's way of saying amen to what my heart and my mind are thinking. Um, and it's a sign to me that I am expanding. And I'm curious if
Mm.
that embodiment happens to either of you.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think when we both spoke before, I think I talked a little bit about this, but when I was sitting in seminary, I'm getting my doctorate, and uh, I kept hearing from my friend and colleague to me, Spencer Helms, saying they were talking a lot about faith and spirituality and embodiment. Exactly what you just said, Julie. They kept using the term embodiment, and I was sitting there like, I don't know what this means. I don't get it. This doesn't make sense to me. What do you mean the spirituality is in the body, that I could embody spirituality? I could not, I couldn't compute. Um, and it would come up in almost every class. We were in I think this was our intersectional feminist theology class. So everybody in the class was really talking about how it resonated with them. And I felt like an idiot, really. I was sitting there and I'm like, I just don't get this. But it was during this time that I was coming back to Catholicism, and the two were coinciding. And when I finally started going back to Mass and finally started re-engaging in the Catholic liturgy and experience, it clicked. And that is solely because my body was participatory in the spiritual process. So what a lot of people hate about, the Catholic Mass of the sitting down, standing up, everybody's saying the same thing at the same time. You put your hands up, you lift them higher, then you put them down. Um, if you're not really thinking about what it means, it could just become rote, of course. But for me, it was a way for me to praise and like feel the divine within my body. And they were acts of meditation, just um, being able to move through a liturgy with my body, to participate, also just centered me in exactly what we were doing. My mind wasn't wandering. I wasn't thinking about other things. It's like when you do anything with your hands, or you color, or you knit or crochet, you're kind of, it focuses you. It's very meditative. And so doing this physical act in the mass just helps me focus on what we are actually talking about, um, and what I'm feeling the spirit do in the midst of this church service. And that's when it kind of occurred to me that, oh, this is embodiment, that I am feeling the work of the spirit move through my body, and it's a participatory action. I'm involved. I'm not just sitting and receiving, but
Mm.
I am participating. And so I think that's been the most significant shift for me. which, you would have told me that at a seven, as 7 years old when I was in mass going, why do I have to sit and stand? And I would have said, you're crazy, but I just fully get it now. I'm like locked in to the movement of the mass.
Mm. That's beautiful. And I love that you found that through ritual, because sometimes people are prone to be dismissive of ritual, and what you're speaking to is the beauty that you found
Mm.
and continue to find in ritual. So thank you. Um, to answer your question, Julie, when I was first introduced to Sufism, it's I was very much sort of carrying the wounding of my experience of my childhood experience of church. And so I was like, I don't want to know what that means. I don't want to know what that says. I was being introduced to these practices and chants, and and of course they were in Arabic. And I'm like, I don't want a translation. Like I just want to try
Mm.
like a science experiment. Like I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to see how I feel. And so I remember like the first time that I sat down, I'm like, okay, I'm going to try this chant, and I have a transliteration written down, and I'm going to just bumble my way through it. And I'm like, oh wow, I do feel different in my body.
Mm.
I did experience a sense of calm. I experienced a sense of peace that I hadn't felt before. And then when I was first and I was given a prayer rug. I know that you're probably familiar with the Islamic ritual prayer, the five daily prayers. And so I was given as a gift, a friend, who knew I was starting in my experience of Sufism, my experiments of Sufism. They gave me a prayer rug. And when I was on that prayer rug, I kid you not, I felt like I'd come home.
Mm.
Mm.
Like even now, just
Wow.
Mm.
Wow.
yeah.
Mm.
And then years later, when I actually went on the pilgrimage, went on Hajj and went to the Kaaba and was in prostration at the Kaaba, which is, for those of you less familiar with Islam, the Kaaba is like the metaphorical representation of the house of God. So like there's an actual structure that in Islam we believe was first built by the angels in the heavens, but then on the earth was built by Adam and then rebuilt by his grandson Seth, and then which came later to be rebuilt by Abraham and Ishmael. And so that when I was in prostration there, I felt
Mm.
like my soul was at home, you know. And so there's a way like I move through my days feeling like my soul wants nothing else other than to be in prostration
Wow.
at the cup.
Wow. Can I ask you, Habib, because there's a tradition in our um, in the Catholic faith, and I'm sure others, I'm sure the Episcopalians maybe do as well. I don't know, where when you're getting ordained, you prostrate yourself on the floor, and I didn't know this for a while, and so when I was told that this was part of the ordination, I was at first almost there was fear in it, and then I sort of probed myself as to why there was fear, and the answer was vulnerability. The
Oh,
vulnerability of prostrating yourself is scary because you're
yeah.
truly laying yourself before the divine, and that's scary for people like me who want control all the time. And so I'm curious for you, what is it about the prostration that gives you that feeling of home?
Hmm. So this is where we're going to talk about the mystical approach as opposed to like a traditional the outer religion. This is more like the inner religion. So the the prostration for me, it symbolizes effacement of the self
Mm,
into the reality of divine oneness.
Mm.
And I have
Wow.
had that experience through my spiritual practices of feeling like that dissolving, where the boundaries of the ego and the boundaries of the physical body start to soften, and then you gain perception of your energetic body, and then you feel the softening of the boundaries of the energetic body and the connectedness. Like I've had these moments where I just saw the I yeah, I guess it's nervous I don't know how to this it's the tears, or I guess I feel vulnerable, and so I'm laughing because I feel um but like I felt this that sense of connectedness. I've felt that sense of unifying love, like that sense of love where there is no self, there is only
Mm,
love. There's no
Mm.
he,
mm,
there is no she, there is no I, there is only the divine. There is
Wow.
only love. And
mm.
Mm.
yeah,
That's beautiful.
When you emerge out of um, that experience of oneness,
yeah.
how do you go back to to life? Like, how do you go back and, get up the next morning and do work that's not necessarily what you want to do, but it's what you're getting paid for? How do you go from the feeling of oneness and a sense of just pure love, unbounded,
Yeah.
back to the world, which is structured around boundaries and egos and
Yeah.
transactions?
I'll tell you after I have a two-part answer, and hopefully I'll remember both parts. So the first part is just the reality of what you're speaking to. Like I felt that in terms of shortly after I came back from going on the pilgrimage, I, was in that place of being in prostration at the Kaaba and feeling that the home, feeling that I'd gone home. And so there was a certain level of feeling the loss of leaving that, but
Mhm.
then also like needing to remind myself, oh, I carry that in my heart. And I don't have to physically go there, you know, that the heart is the doorway to the soul, and is the doorway to, through my heart, I can travel through that place of divine imbuement within me, to the
Mhm.
holy house within me, the place where the Holy Spirit resides in me, or the divine fragrance, or the divine essence, whatever language in your tradition, or like so I don't have to physically be there. I can go there within, you know.
Mhm.
But so there's that part, and there's the part of being in the car. I think it was maybe a week or however many days after going on the pilgrimage. And I'm like, oh, am I going to listen to this news show and on the radio? And I did, and I realized the point in which my remembrance of the divine and my sense of intimacy with the divine, I forgot because I got caught up in what I was listening to on
Mm.
the news story, and I started to cry, because
Because you forgot.
I missed it. Because
Because
yes,
you,
because
yeah.
there was that moment of forgetting that intimacy with the divine, like feeling that connection, and then oh, this worldly listening to the news took me out of that, you know, And so I had tears at the fact that I had been taken out because that's, oh no, I don't want to be out. I want to be in. I want to live with that sense of intimacy with the divine. Um, and so that leads me to the ritual prayer is practice. So this very much gets to what you were saying, Reverend Madison, about the the prayer positions, and the
Yeah.
bowing, standing, and whatever.
Yeah.
Like each of those prayer positions has an inner meaning. There's an inner meaning that is associated with the outer form. And so when for the Islamic prayer, when you are in prostration, that is a representation of the dissolution into the oneness, the effacement of the ego self into the divine oneness. But then when you come back, you sit up, and that's like an affirmation of your manifestation in the world.
Mm.
And then you go back into prostration to affirm that your intention is to be one with the divine. And then you come
Mm.
back and you sit in in that sitting position. You like because you have the standing, then you have the bowing, then you have the complete prostration, and then you have the sitting. So those are all the positions. So when you're sitting, you're at the midpoint between the existence of the self and the non-existence of the self.
Mm.
You're at the midpoint between existing only in the divine oneness and existing in the world, in the material world, the world of the outer senses, the world in which we relate to the creation. And so, what those of us who follow the path of Sufism, like what we try for, is we try to maintain that sense of intimacy with the divine in the mundane,
Yes.
in whether we're wiping off the kitchen counter or loading the dishwasher or getting on the bus or checking out at the grocery store. Like what we try and maintain that sense of intimacy with the divine in every moment.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I see a lot of similarities actually between Catholicism and
Yeah.
what you just explained
Yeah.
in terms of of there's a piece of this that's sort of collective communal. I think you were talking about, I think that's when you're maybe sitting or in the full position, but you're sort of in communion with others. And for Catholics, that's when you're all repeating the same thing at the same time, but you're also doing it with, millions of other Catholics around the world because you're using the same readings every single week, the same as a million other Catholics around the world. Um,
Exactly.
but yet, when you're kneeling, that is the time of sort of, utter devotion or adoration. Then when you're sitting, you're more in a sort of a listening posture, and then bowing is something different. So I really appreciated the way you explained that. That's really beautiful, and I think whether a faith tradition defines that or not, I think we can all find that within our traditions. Like this is what I'm doing right now, and I'm sitting and listening to this person speak, or this is what I'm feeling when we're getting up and holding hands for this particular part of the service, or whatever. Um, I think we can place sort of divine um, meaning on every little thing that we do.
Yeah.
Um, and it just creates much more expansive spirituality than we're traditionally given. I think it's really beautiful.
Yeah. I love that. Um, Talking about bringing divine meaning to every little thing that we do. So those people who are aware of the mindfulness practices, that there's that intention to bring mindfulness to every moment. In the tradition of Sufism, one of the ways that we might do that is we try and actively engage in remembrance of the divine. So it's repeating the divine name, so repeating the name of God, or repeating the divine attributes, or some like having something constantly going in terms of a I don't want to use the word mantra, but like very mantra-like, like to have this sort of either a visualization of the name of God written in your heart or a visualization of the light, but like this intention of maintaining that connection all the time. Um, and so I do things like because as I've shared, like going on pilgrimage and being at the process part of the pilgrimage is circumambulating, so walking around the Kaaba. And so like if I'm washing a dish or wiping off the counter, or even when I go for my morning walk, I'll take, if I get to the cul-de-sac, I will go in the to the as if I am reenacting that, like as a reminder to myself. If I'm washing a pot, I'll make my circles to the left as if I'm walking, like so there's just so many ways to bring that kind of consciousness, and whether you refer that to as your Buddha nature or your Christ consciousness or Allah consciousness, like what regardless of your tradition or just mindfulness, like of your true self, your higher self, like it's I can't I can't even verbalize the inestimable value of trying to live in that way, and the transformation that comes in trying to live that way. So, and here I am doing a lot of talking where, where I was really.
That's
No,
beautiful.
that's great. I I've been thinking about how, in this idea of bringing a divine meaning to every moment, I'm just becoming aware of how easy that is for me to do when I am with other people, and how much harder for me it is to do when I am not with other people. So, A, that's like the growing edge for me, but B, um, it's really wonderful to see God, working and weaving a story whenever I am with other people. And there is this, um, you know, dark evangelical voice in me that still is telling me, like, be careful, you know, you're the, the real God is, you know, um, well, let me back up. The deep evangelical voice makes me doubt and fear that when I that because because I see God in community, that I'm like that's not right somehow, that I'm actually not putting enough emphasis on God. And what it feels like to me is that I just, that God exists in the space between us.
Mm,
Um, but it's something that it's both a source of incredible meaning and connection to the divine, and because of the evangelical focus on a personal, private relationship with God, with Jesus, it's also something that I am constantly doubting. Like
mm,
maybe I'm a universal Unitarian, in the way of like the community is the thing here, or a humanist, right? Maybe I'm a humanist.
mm,
Maybe it's just that I really love humans, and that there's not something divine in that. But I find it really difficult for me to separate God from community.
mm.
Uh,
And
and
did your practice tell you you should? Your sort of childhood.
my family hated human beings. I mean, we're like very misanthropic, and that's one of the ways in which, from a very young age, I remember being at the dinner table listening to my parents talk about just other human beings in this way where there was like only a few good human beings in
Mm,
the world.
Yeah.
And something about that just never, it seemed a lack of compassion to
Mm.
me. It seemed like the exclusivism that we've been talking about was everywhere in their life, and I see it in especially evangelical people, where there's just this distrust of other human beings. And I have for sure trusted human beings who did not deserve to be trusted. But my experience, by and large, is that um, my love and trust for human beings has mostly turned out okay for
Mm.
me. So yeah, there is a fundamental distrust of both the body and other human beings in the evangelical world. And so that's probably what's
Yeah.
coming up for me. Like my mysticism absolutely is based in community, but there's this, like I said, this dark evangelical voice that's like, that's not God, policing where God can
Mm.
and cannot be. And so I'm just like embattled mystic, because as I think I told both of you just recently, I broke up with the Bible. I was like, this is not working for me anymore. This like Protestant focus on the scripture is just not, is making me feel really kind of handcuffed and imprisoned, because where I see God is I have the experience of God less in scripture than I do in relationship, in nature,
Mm.
when I'm reading, when I'm communing with someone else's ideas through poetry or a novel or whatever it is. Um, and I sort of broke up with the Bible. I was like, I'm not going to feel bad about not feeling deeply about this relationship to scripture anymore. And I do see it as kind of my mystical turn, because the way I see mysticism is like, um, the the truth about God is in the connections between people and the earth, people and one another, not just between people and the book. Uh,
Well, and what's interesting is, the sort of medieval mystics that we all learn about and read about, it, it was never just about scripture. It was, they did have a direct experience with God, but it was like a vision, or that
yeah,
they had a relational experience with God that wasn't just based on reading the text or scripture. It was
right.
something that, expanded their mind and helped them see the divine in ways that they weren't before.
Yeah,
So, it was never just rooted in scripture
no,
or in the text.
no,
It was always
right.
more expansive than that.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for the medieval mystics.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for that tradition. Yeah.
What comes up for me, Reverend Julie, in relation to what you were just talking about, is I've heard in multiple traditions that the greatest indicator of your love for the divine is the degree to which you are loving with the divine's creation.
Mm.
So that means
Mm,
the degree to which you embody love in your relationship to your brothers and sisters in humanity, into plants and animals, and
mm,
the created world, and
I love that.
all that it encompasses. And then I can also think what came to mind was Father Adam Bucko. And I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's very much into um, contemplative prayer and and also very much into social justice work. And
Mm.
so he's like, we don't engage in contemplative prayer solely to cultivate, and this is my language, so
Hmm.
please be merciful if I'm not saying this is exactly how he would language it, but this is sort of how I'm going to interpret that, which is the purpose of our contemplative actions and our contemplative practices are not solely our relationship with the divine. They're so that we also engage in action, so
Mm.
that our relationship with the divine manifests in our relationship to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very much, I very much believe in prophetic activism, which,
Mm,
it really is this idea that our work towards social change is due to our spirituality. We work for these things because of our spiritual
mm,
traditions or faith traditions. They are what call and move us to
yeah.
make change in the world around us. And I think anybody that tries to divorce those two is really doing a disservice to either one of them. Because
Yeah.
what comes, this divine nature within us should be coming out in our actions toward other
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. I mean, Jesus fed people, right?
Right.
He, he fed people, he healed people,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the poor, he was, yeah,
He he was with the disenfranchised. It
Yeah.
wasn't
yeah,
like only the elite got access to Jesus, right?
yeah,
Jesus was with those who were downtrodden and disenfranchised and rejected by others.
yeah.
Mm,
And he wasn't just saying, believe in me. He
No.
was, he was feeding them. He
Yep.
was healing them. And he was,
Yes.
as you're saying, Habib, like he was doing all that out in the street. He
He
wasn't
was,
doing it in the temple. He was going to where people are, to where the suffering was.
you know, and embodying love and embodying compassion,
Yeah,
embodying mercy. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I want to be conscious of the time and respectful of the time commitments that we talked about before we got. But this conversation has been wonderful, and thank you so much. Before we wrap up, um, two sort of mini questions and whatever lands for you. Um, J- Julie, I heard you talk about community and how and the importance of community, and I have this question for both of you, which is from that experience of feeling. Um, where you didn't fit in, so to speak. And
Mm.
what was most instrumental in terms of maintaining, or if not maintaining, returning to that sense of connection with the sacred?
Mm. I mean, straight up as a person who realized her queerness and left the church, when I came back, the thing that got me to sit in a pew again was knowing that my full humanity was acknowledged in that pew. I knew that this church um, believed in my full humanity
Mm,
as a queer person. Along with that, the thing was absolutely um, preaching the gospel as it related to the real gritty, struggling world
Mhm.
that we're living in, and not preaching some kind of otherworldly gospel only.
mm,
Yeah. All of that made me feel whole again.
mm.
Yeah. Um, I second everything Julie just said. Like basically to the T. Um, I think I think for me there was also a piece of you can't have this.
Mm,
My relationship with the divine is mine. Nobody can take it from me. Um, there is no ownership over the divine. I know that I am beloved by my creator. I know that my marriage, which is a queer marriage, I know that my marriage is beloved and affirmed by my creator. Um, and I know that my creator wants us to treat its created beings with love and respect. And so nobody can take that. And so I think
mhm.
that's how I feel at home is that I know that none of these naysayers have ownership.
Mm,
And I'm willing to stand up there and speak my truth with the divine, my
mm,
experience with the divine, so that other people also know that they can still have their experience with the divine. Because too many people, as Julie were saying earlier, have a bad experience with exclusivity, and that's the only door that they know is available to them. But
mhm,
there's not, like she said, there's a bigger tent. There's
mhm.
a much bigger tent. Um, so yeah.
I love that.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
thank you both. It's been a joy. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate being able to engage in this conversation with both of you.
Yeah.
And thank you to all of the listeners for joining us on Beyond Names. Before we go, I encourage you to just take one breath, one small moment of stillness, and just take a moment to see what stayed with you from this conversation. May something you heard today help you reconnect with the light in your own heart. May you grow in compassion and clarity and courage and mercy and embodied love for yourself and in relationship to that which you hold as sacred and in relation to all of the creation. May you find your way home again and again, back home to yourself, back home to the divine, however you name it. If today's conversation spoke to you, I'd love for you to share it, leave a review, or reach out. Until next time, may you be light, may you carry light, may you consciously participate in growing your light, and may you share your light. Peace be with you.